What happens when we die? I mean, for basically all of human history, that's been a question for philosophers, for spiritual leaders. But something's changing. Right now, for the very first time, science is actually getting a peek into the brain's final moments. And what we're finding, well, it starts with these experiences that are really, really hard to explain. I mean, listen to that. That's someone who has been to the very edge and come back. And these kinds of experiences, they're reported all over the world, across every culture. To the people who have them, they're absolutely real. They talk about leaving their bodies, seeing these incredible, brilliant lights, and just feeling this profound sense of peace. So the big question is, what is actually going on inside the brain when this happens? So what are we looking at here? Is this some kind of spiritual journey, or is it just, the brain's final spectacular fireworks show? For a long, long time, science had a pretty straightforward answer. But believe me, that answer is being torn up and completely rewritten as we speak. Okay, so let's get into it. We're about to look into a moment that was always a total black box. And what scientists are finding, it's not just interesting, it challenges the very definition of what it means to be alive or dead. You see, the old way of thinking was super simple, right? Heart stops beating, blood stops flowing to the brain, and boom, lights out, game over. But that's not what the new evidence says at all. A really groundbreaking study from the University of Michigan found something honestly astonishing. They were monitoring dying patients, and moments after the heart stopped, their brains didn't just flicker and die out. No, they roared to life with this incredible surge of activity. And here's the really mind-blowing part. It wasn't just any old brain activity. They found gamma waves. Now, to be clear, these aren't the slow, lazy waves you have when you're asleep. Gamma waves are the fastest, most complex brain waves we've got. They're linked to things like high-level thinking, memory, consciousness itself. So finding this signature of heightened awareness in a brain that is technically dying, well, that's a massive, massive paradox for neuroscience. And get this, it wasn't just random static either. The team actually pinpointed this surge to a very specific part of the brain, a hot zone for consciousness called the TPO junction. Think of it as the brain's central station, where everything you see, hear, and feel gets integrated. So the key takeaway here is pretty wild. The brain seems to be generating a highly organized, conscious-like signal right there on the brink of death. So, okay, we've got this biological engine, this incredible surge of gamma waves. But what does that actually translate to? What kind of experience does that create? I mean, what does it feel like to be in that state? Well, for a lot of people, it's a journey of just profound peace. The stories are surprisingly consistent, no matter who's telling them. There's this feeling of floating, of leaving the body, moving through a tunnel towards a brilliant, loving light. Many people report seeing their entire life flash before their eyes, and it's all wrapped up in this feeling of absolute calm. These are, the classic near-death experiences we've all heard about. But, and this is a really important but, that's not the whole story. Not by a long shot. We tend to focus on these beautiful, blissful journeys, but that's not the only kind of experience people have. For a pretty significant number of people, the journey is, well, it's terrifying. Yeah, if you look at the numbers, while the pleasant experiences are definitely the majority, around 80%, the research suggests that up to 1 in 5 of these experiences are actually distressing. So we're not talking about some super rare fluke here. This is a real, significant part of the phenomenon that we have to talk about. And these distressing experiences aren't all the same. They seem to fall into a few different buckets. You've got the inverted NDE, where you get all the classic stuff, the tunnel, the lights, but instead of being peaceful, it's a nightmare of just losing all control. Then there's the void, which people describe as this endless, isolated nothingness that creates this deep, deep despair. And, well, hellish NDEs are pretty much what they sound like, horrifying visions of torment. It just goes to show you how incredibly complex and varied these experiences can be. All right, so let's recap. We've got this crazy, unexpected brain activity on one hand, and on the other, we have these incredibly profound, deeply personal experiences, some beautiful, some absolutely terrifying. So, the billion-dollar question is, what does it all mean? And this is where we get to the heart of the debate. You've basically got two camps. On one side, you have the strictly neurobiological view. This says it's the brain's final, dramatic fireworks show. A flood of chemicals like DMT just creates this powerful, vivid illusion as the whole system shuts down. But on the other side, you have the transcendental view, which argues that this is actually evidence that our consciousness isn't just locked inside our skulls, that it might be able to perceive things even when the body is failing. And look, even if you stick to pure science, this is a huge puzzle. Dr. George Mashore, one of the scientists from that Michigan study, put it perfectly. He said, how can a brain that's literally dying, that's being starved of oxygen, possibly create an experience that people describe as being realer than real life? It shouldn't be possible. And then you've got maybe the biggest challenge of all for the it's all in your brain model. These things called verified perceptions. Professor Janus Holden asks the exact right question. How does a spike of gamma waves in your brain explain documented cases of people accurately reporting things that happened while they were clinically dead, like describing a specific tool used in a surgery that was happening in the room next door? A chemical flood in the brain just doesn't explain that very well. So you can see, this isn't just some abstract philosophical debate, right? What we're learning here has massive, real-world consequences for how we live, how we think about death, and maybe even how we treat each other. Just look at the people who've gone through this. The after effects are almost always life-changing. People almost universally report losing their fear of death. They become less interested in money and possessions, and way more compassionate and spiritual. Many of them completely change their lives, new careers, new relationships. Whatever you believe is causing it, the experience itself changes people down to their very core. And those changes ripple outwards, into medicine, into society. Think about it. If the brain can be lighting up with activity after the heart has stopped, when is someone actually truly gone? This research forces us to ask some really tough ethical questions about our very definition of death. And that has huge knock-on effects for things like end-of-life care and organ donation. So where does all this leave us? Well, we're standing on a really fascinating frontier where science is finally starting to ask questions that for centuries were just unaskable. And it all boils down to this, really. This is the ultimate question. Is the brain the thing that creates consciousness from scratch? Is it the generator? Or is it more like a radio receiver, something that just tunes into a consciousness that might already be out there, existing outside of our physical bodies? For now, the brain's final secret is still very much a secret. But for the first time in history, it feels like we're finally starting to decode the signal.